Hello, and welcome to the Fantasy Rewind Podcast. I'm your co-host, Dylan Stoll, and I'm joined as always by my friend, Michael Whitford.
Hey.
So today, we're going to be talking episode 6 of Rings of Power, titled...
Udun? I don't know. Udun
Yeah, Udun it is a good one there. So before we dive into our episode review and breakdown here, we have a couple of reminders to give out. So as always, if you'd like to get in contact with the show, you can send us an email, which is fantasyrewindpod@gmail.com. You can also get at us on Twitter, which is @fantasyrewind, or on Instagram as well, which is @fantasyrewindpod. Also, we just want to announce the results of the giveaway for the book that we were doing for our year-long anniversary. So we already announced this on Instagram, but the winner of the book, which the winner chose The Silmarillion, which is an amazing book there. Great choice there. It is Critter XD. So congratulations, and the book is in the mail. I hope you enjoy it.
It's on the way. Yes, we hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much to everyone who stopped by and shared and liked and on their posts and stuff. So that was very appreciated, and sent us messages. Very appreciated, and we thank you so much for that.
All right, let's dive into the rewind.
Fantasy Rewind. Okay, so episode 6 of Rings of Power. So many feelings towards this episode. I just got finished watching it, and I was left with a lot of questions and a lot of confusion on my part as a viewer. And so I think if I were to sum up this episode in a few words, beautiful, but confusing, or even dumb.
And okay, that's not holding it back at all. So I think I have to agree with you on a couple things there. First of all, I thought that the episode was shot beautifully, which again has never been an issue for Rings of Power. It's always looked stunning on screen here. I'll also say this is by far the most action-packed episode of the season so far.
Absolutely.
And so I really did enjoy that part there. However, there were some very questionable choices, very questionable plot devices that went into this episode that definitely took me out of my enjoyment and kind of had me scratching my head a little bit as to some of these.
Yeah.
But let's dive into some things a little bit more specifically. So, Mike, I think the best place to start here is just talking about the orc attack on the elf tower. So what were your thoughts on this particular scene here?
So I was, we kind of open up and we see the father of the orcs,
Adar.
the Uruk, Adar, planting some seeds, which you find out later is like an elven tradition, which really they've been sort of hinting at, but really spelled it out in this episode that he's a twisted elf.
Yeah.
I thought that was fine. He was rallying them, saying, like, we're no longer going to be slaves. And I was like, okay, cool. They're trying to get us to really kind of see the orcs as more than just the villains.
Right. This was the most
fine.
The most, like, character development for orcs that we've ever gotten.
Yeah. But, I mean, like, outside of, like, him, we don't care about any of the orcs.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think that's an issue I have with that is, like, we care about him, but even he just treats orcs as fodder. So
he might bend over and close their eyes when they die or whatever, but you're right. He still is sending out the orcs to just die and to do what he needs them to do, which in this case is attempt to kill a bunch of villagers and an elf.
Yeah, over a sword.
Or a key.
I'm just gonna... yeah. You expect... I don't want to get onto that just yet. But anyway, yeah, the elf tower, it was very cool, but it very reminiscent, this whole, like, with the Southlanders and the orcs fighting them thing, two towers. Yeah, that's all I kept thinking throughout the entire thing. This is the two towers just done slightly differently. My biggest issue with this first part, it isn't the fighting. The action, all of it looks beautiful. They did an excellent job with that. Loved that they had the tower collapse in. I thought that was cool. But my issue was, how did all of the villagers get from up there in the watchtower down to the village without any of those orcs noticing?
Because as we find out later in this episode, Mike, that teleportation exists. So that's how.
Yes.
But yes, I would agree with you. I thought that this particular scene here was really cool, how it showed how the villagers like fully went in on home aloneing the tower there and like filling it with a bunch of booby traps. I kind of blink a little bit at their ability to do so completely. But I think that it was a cool scene. It was very enjoyable. It completely reminded me of Two Towers. Reminded me so much of the Battle of Helm's Deep, just in that regard a little bit. But also it reminded me just of the villagers that you see from Rohan just running away through the Westfold as the orcs burned and pillaged it. And the wild men of the West as well like came in on them. You see like the same type of like mentality of all of the soldiers, whether they're little kids or old folks, putting on armor, gearing up to try and fight their battle that they were given at Helm's Deep there from all across Rohan. And you're seeing the same thing in the Southlands here, where you're seeing all of these people, whether they're Theo or older men that might have once fought in a war before, strap on a sword, grab an axe or a pitchfork or whatever, and get ready to defend everything that they have left.
Yeah, that's a definitely good connection there. I didn't quite make it to that. I more so was just making it to the Battle of Helm's Deep and a lot of the sort of how the hope was kind of all gone. And I mean, it did go in some different directions than I thought it was going to. So long story short, they got down to the village somehow and they fortified it, and they set up booby traps there for when the orcs came down, which my wife happened to come home and she was watching a little bit with me, and she was like, how did they know to go here? Like, why are they going to the keep or to the tavern? Why are they focusing there instead of like any of these other buildings?
That's a very good question.
And I was like, that's a pretty good question. That's very valid. Not sure. Maybe they can smell the people. I don't know. I was like, they're doing it because, you know, it's to create tension and to like, oh no, so much is at stake. I love though how they set it up and they made it seem really easy. Like, yeah, they got them all, and then lo and behold, oh wait, they didn't actually get all the orcs. Those were actually their villagers. That was a
nice
cool
twist.
little twist.
I liked
there.
that twist a lot, actually.
I did too. I thought that was very clever, and very well done. But
see, I did not think for a second that was all of the orcs. I was like, there's way too few of them.
No.
I did, however, have the thought. I was like, you know, what if that was like one of the scouting parties that was like looking for them? Like they took them out. Maybe now those orcs won't report back to the larger party that, oh, we found the villagers. But no.
Yeah.
That was a focused attack on the tavern, on the villagers there, and everybody comes afterwards. But something that does happen during this particular part that is of significance is Bronwyn getting shot with an arrow.
Oh, and kissing. Well, and, you know, before that, having a little bit of final... like, I'm gonna kiss you, elf.
Yeah, they finally broke the seal on the romance between Arondir and Bronwyn. Just that completely forced narrative that is so unbelievable, it's ridiculous. But yeah, so Bronwyn gets shot with an arrow, and they are like, oh no, she's going to like bleed out if we don't do something here. And I thought for a minute, actually, that she might actually die. But lo and behold, she takes it like a champ, gets the arrow pulled out from her, and then her wound soldered by a flaming hot sword.
Interesting that he put the seeds in her.
Yes.
And I know he had said, I think they had mentioned before about them having healing properties.
Well, what they had mentioned was that the Valar, especially like Yavanna in particular of the Valar, is present and like watching wherever like there is a new life growing. So like by Arondir putting those seeds into her, it's like they're like growing inside her basically. I don't know. It's just kind of like what I was thinking, but it's like Yavanna putting her protection almost on Bronwyn. And so that's kind of how I interpreted it, at least.
That's fair. Anyway, so they find out after they defeated the orcs, or thought they defeated the orcs, that they were actually their village mates. And then, oh no, there's an actual attack coming from the side.
Right? They're not just going to march right down where you have all your defenses. They're going to sneak around and get you from the back.
Yeah, and so then pretty much they're encircled. They're getting ready to just... They bust in, actually, into the keep where all the women and children are being held. And this scene was actually...
brutal.
It was really good, I'd say. Probably one of the best in the episode in terms of, like, they just walk in and they're just like, where is the artifact? And, you know, and then they just start killing people.
Yeah, no mercy at all.
I was like, that's how this should be, actually. Like,
that's what orcs would do.
I was surprised. Yeah, I know. I was surprised they did that, but, like, I was surprised they had restraint in the first place. But then I was like, oh, yeah, they do need the artifact. And he knows it. Arondir knows it, because if they just give it to him, then they're all dead anyway.
Right, exactly. And I thought it was an interesting choice that you see Arondir basically being willing to sacrifice Bronwyn. Because he's like, I'm not going to tell you where this is. Like, it's too much of an important artifact. You can't have it. I know you want it. You're going to kill us all anyway. But then, lo and behold, Theo somehow saw exactly where Arondir put it. Because he knew Theo was following him and watching him. Not so stealthily, try and hide this sword, but you would think that if Arondir was putting it under the floorboards in the tavern, that he, first of all, would have made sure nobody was in the tavern there with him to watch, so they wouldn't know exactly where it was. And maybe when he saw that somebody was following him, because he's supposed to be this elf ranger, if he felt like he was being watched, maybe he should have not hid it in the most obvious position.
I don't know, man. I don't know about all that. Like, I kind of just assumed he watched him put it.
Yeah.
Or, like we go to find out later, he does have kind of a connection to it, like you had said.
Yeah.
But apparently not that good of a connection.
No.
We should pause here, because after this is when, you know, the third day comes, the sunlight, and...
Numenor to the rescue.
The Riders of Rohan.
Yes.
Yeah. Except it's not the Riders of Rohan this time. But we're kind of, in this episode, flashing between the Numenorians on the three ships. The three ships. I'll say that one more time. The three ships. Why is that important? Because there is a lot of people on three ships. And a lot of horses on three ships. That was where I was like, the math not quite adding up here for me. Not to mention also, like, when they're flashing to them, they're out at sea, and then they're like, it's going to take us like a couple days to get there, and it's like, but they're in the village, and they're right on the eve, like, you know, on the edge of death, and it's like, these timelines aren't matching up, and I know they're doing that to build suspense, but it almost should have been like Numenorians were just completely out of this until they showed up.
Yeah, agreed. I thought that would have been a much better way to do it.
Because otherwise it's like, okay, you're at sea, and then all of a sudden you're riding, like, charging headlong. And how'd you know to go there?
Exactly.
You know, that was kind of my thing, too, is, like, they're just, like, not even just, like, going around, like, oh, we see this village, and it looks like they're under attack or things. Like, no, they're just charging across this huge plain, going right into this village to kill all these orcs.
Because if you could make the argument that Halbrand would have told them that the orcs were invading the Southlands, that he thought the orcs would try and take out the Elf Tower, but how far is it from the Elf Tower to this village? And how would they know exactly what village to go to and show up exactly on time, other than plot, of course?
I mean, that's the thing, though, is, like, they did a lot of things in this episode for plot, and I feel very let down by how some of this concluded. For instance, like, if they wanted it to be at the same time, that's fine, but put in something, maybe even flashbacks later on to explain some of it, and keep the Numenorians out of it so we're not in this weird, like, time confusion. And I know some people might be like, well, you guys are just nitpicking right now, but...
It took me out of it. Like, I was a little taken aback. I was, like, enjoying the fight that was going on in the village, and then all of a sudden, the Numenorians went from being on their ships in the middle of the ocean.
While charging across some giant field.
to charging across some giant field to being in the village.
Yeah. And it's just like, it's fine if you want something to work out in a certain way, but build it in a way that's believable. And I don't think they really did that. And then we get to the my biggest issue with the episode. I do want to come back and talk about the kind of the confrontation between Halbrand and Galadriel and yeah. But let's just talk about the sword. While it was a cool little reveal, like when at the end of the episode where he gives him the sword and he tells him Theo gets the sword, quote unquote, to give to the Numenorians to sort of shed this weight. And I was like, oh, it's very much like a One Ring moment, like get rid of this temptation. And he opens it up and it's like a regular hand axe. And I was immediately sitting there like, oh wow, he didn't trust him. He didn't think Theo was going to check it. And then it flashes to the old man with the sword, sticking it into the watchtower base or the rock at the watchtower to twist it. I was like, oh wow, that was actually really clever. And I was like, what's it going to do? Is it going to just end the episode here? That would be a really good way to end this episode, is to just leave us like, oh no, what's going to happen? No, they didn't. No, instead, this sword, which they fought over, that seems to have magical powers, that takes blood, and it's been entrusted to the ancestors of the Southlands, is a key. Okay, cool. A key to unlocking Sauron's tomb, a key to unlocking some more powerful items. Like, what's the key for, right? No. It is not a key to anything cool. It is a key to open up and break the dam that's holding all this water back. What? Are you kidding me? I was sitting there and I was just like looking at it and I was like, that is so stupid. Because if they knew that this key was going to open up the dam, why didn't they just go and bust the dam down? There was enough orcs to do that. They've dug a whole huge trench system, which we find out later is pretty much just plumbing for the Southlands.
Exactly.
They built this whole intricate plumbing system with a bunch of slave labor. They could have brought all those slaves up there, bust down this dam for us. Okay, we'll do it. But instead, no, we need this key to break apart some stone.
It does more than that, though.
Listen. The only reason it does more than that is because they built the trench system.
Yes, yeah.
But they built this entire system predicated on finding this sword to knock a couple rocks down to let the water go. I mean, I know it was more than just a couple rocks, but still, they could have done that without this key. That's my issue.
And I think it's a valid concern. I firstly want to jump back, though, and say that when Adar first came out of the town hall area there, and when the Numenorians were fighting, he said to the old dude, I've got a task for you. And I knew right then and there that he was giving him the sword, and he was going to play like he had it and run away. And the whole time, when Galadriel had it, when Arondir had it, when Theo had it, I was like, check the stinking package. It's not in there. I was like, I know it's not. Prove me right. Why haven't you checked this yet?
I
didn't
think it happened just because, the minute he came out and said that, it was just Numenorians there. So
yeah, it was a super quick blink and you miss it type of thing. The other thing I'll say, though, is that this, keyhole that they needed to put the base in was at the Elf Tower. Why was it at the Elf Tower? If it was at the Elf Tower and the elves knew about it, like Arondir seemed to know, why didn't they destroy the hole the sword was supposed to go into and make it so that this weapon could never be used? It just didn't make any sense at all to me.
Yeah.
And then you throw in what I thought was just the final cherry on top of the idiocy of the final parts of this episode, with Galadriel walking towards the destructive wave of fire and death coming right at her.
But that's supposed to show that her going into the darkness and her, her realizing that she caused this, I guess. I don't know.
I don't know. I thought that was just unnecessary.
It leads to so many questions. Like if it had been a powerful weapon and all this, like cool. But it being a key to like bust open the dam and let all the water go just makes so many plot holes. Like who designed this in the first place?
Right.
Why would they design this for Sauron and for the creation of Mordor? Like, again, very cool how it all happened. You know, the water rushing into the volcano, causing, like, that's how they were getting rid of the sun as they were creating this huge, cloud of smoke.
Eruption from Mount Doom.
Yes. And so, like, okay, I get all that. Like, very neat, very interesting way to do that. But at the same time, like, why wasn't it done forever ago if this was designed for evil, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe I missed something in all this. Like, whoever designed the dam, maybe they used magical stones. Who knows?
So let's get back to the part we skipped over here, which is the moments between Halbrand and Adar. Because they are leaning heavily into Halbrand being Sauron.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And they're also leaning heavily into a romance between Halbrand and Galadriel.
Just to break that off later when he becomes evil.
So I have several problems with all of this, but
my biggest problem is that like we've sat here and said like we don't think he's Sauron. It's too obvious.
Maybe the writers are just that bad.
I kind of think that it might be because the way they're building this really, really feels like it.
It really feels like, and I was right there with you. I was like, it's way too obvious. They're laying way too many breadcrumbs here. If this guy ends up being Sauron, then, like, everybody and their mother would have seen this coming. There's no way they'd be that lazy in their writing. However, we are talking about Rings of Power in the Dam, yes. So
I'm sorry, I can't get over that, man.
Seeming to be their forte, unfortunately.
And listeners, if you have any kind of perspective or any way that you could kind of explain this to me, I'm all ears. I would love to hear some rationale why you think this works. Because after watching it, I was just sitting there like, I haven't cared about the lore and it diving off from it and all that because I don't know this section of history as well. Like, it's been forever since I read the Silmarillion, and I know they don't have the rights to it. I haven't really cared about that. I've been interested in learning about different aspects of Middle Earth, but like this just seems like it's just they're writing things in to just write things in and then not really explaining it in very meaningful or convincing ways.
And I will also say that the whole like sword turning the key to ignite Mount Doom seems way more video game-esque than anything Tolkien would have ever written. It seems way more just like I said, like lazy writing than anything else. Not to mention that all of this begs the question of where is Celeborn, Galadriel's husband, who has not been mentioned at all yet in this series, where Galadriel would have been married to her, or married to him, and the romance between her and Halbrand, flush that down the toilet. I don't care about that at all. It's never going to happen. There's just so much going on here that just really makes me question a lot of choices that they're making right now. So I had this comment as far as like what I thought about Galadriel when I was talking to somebody on one of the Lord of the Rings Facebook group here. And I think that it's just worth repeating here because I thought it was a really good comment. I'm biased because I said it. But I said that I don't care about them making Galadriel a warrior.
Nope,
I don't care about them making her the leader of the Northern armies.
Yep, don't care.
What I care about, with her in particular, has been the complete divergence of her character regarding any semblance of wisdom, any semblance of charisma, any semblance of just having any compassion for anybody other than herself. And I thought that portrayal-wise, this episode did the most for me for Galadriel as far as me liking her.
Yeah, this was a good episode for her. And even her interaction with... I
thought that her interactions with Halbrand in this episode were good. I just really cannot get behind the idea of a romance between her and Sauron, and that being a thing they're trying to push.
The Great Deceiver.
Yeah, the Great Deceiver is right. But anyways, I thought that in all, this episode...
But it would explain how he ends up getting into some of the elf inner circles.
That it would. Through Galadriel, going in and meeting Celebrimbor, Gil-galad, Elrond.
Then he sparks up a relationship with Elrond.
Just
go all out here.
Gotta complete that trifecta. The Halbrand, Elrond,
Galadriel
Sauron
ship.
Love triangle.
It is interesting, and if they do make him Sauron, like, I hope they wait a bit longer, obviously, and flesh him out a little bit more, because Halbrand is an interesting character, and he's actually one of the more interesting ones because he has some mystery to him, right? Because you don't know some of his aspects, but you do kind of feel for him, because it's like he doesn't want this role, but he's willing to take it, like this role of the king of the South.
And so one of the things that I think is worth mentioning here as well is after Morgoth was defeated, right? After the big bad of the First Age was defeated in the War of Wrath, Sauron was legitimately repentant. So he was trying to prove to the Valar, prove to other people that he was going to return back to being a person of light, was going to shed his evil ways. And then as he did that more and more, he endeared himself to some of the other races of Middle-earth. And the more he endeared himself, the more he started to slip back into that Lord of Darkness role there. And so what I could almost see them doing is having Halbrand being hesitant to take this role of leadership that he doesn't want, of being the king in the South, and really having it be like he's hesitant to go back to his evil ways of being Sauron. He likes being Halbrand. He likes people calling him Halbrand. And still smithing, still being like that leader in exile, which, if he was the king of the Southlands taking up residence in Mordor, that's a whole other aspect of it all you could go with. But yeah, I think that if they play up that repentant Sauron angle, that it would kind of make sense for the way that Halbrand's acted so far.
Yeah. Well, I'd agree with all of that. I really don't have too much more to say about the episode. I think I kind of got it all out there. As for predictions...
Yeah, let's do it.
I mean, I think next episode, obviously, we're hopefully going to see more of the Meteor Man, and I think we're going to get a bit more interaction between the Meteor Man and those three priestesses of Sauron.
Yeah, I mean, we'll find out what they are and exactly what they can do and what their purpose is.
Because they seem like I think they were kind of hyped, right?
They did. They seemed like they were excited about something.
Yeah, not just them, but the marketing team and everything else, their photos are everywhere. And so I think they're going to have to play some kind of role here coming up. But
see, I think that just like we saw this episode... So let me just say this. There's one more positive thing I want to say about this episode.
Yeah.
I thought it was nice to see the convergence of the Galadriel Halbrand storyline with the Arondir Bronwyn storyline. Thought that was nice. I almost wonder if the next episode, which is the one that is the next to last episode of the season, I think that episode is going to be strongly focusing on the Harfoots, on Elrond and Durin, and just kind of closing in and bringing that chapter of the story to more of a place where they can end for the season. Mm-hmm. And then I feel like the last episode will get some reveals of everything going on here. And I would not be surprised if by the end of this season, Halbrand's identity is still a secret. Mm-hmm. Meteor Man's identity is still a secret. A Balrog is released. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Meteor Man gets captured by the priestesses of Sauron or by the people in white.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what happens with all that. I kind of feel like, man, there's going to be some more time jumps, some weird time things.
Yeah.
Because, with the Balrog, they would have to continue mining. And what we've seen so far is they don't mind just jumping ahead and you don't know how long it's been or anything. So I agree with you. The Balrog will probably pop out here. Last episode.
Last episode, not this next one.
Which, I don't know how I feel about that. Because, okay, so the Balrog comes out and then that's it for the Mines of Moria.
Yeah, that's it for the Mithril delving. And supposedly if they don't get enough Mithril, the elves are all going to die. So, we'll see.
Yeah, that's why I'm kind of like, I don't know how that's going to work exactly. Like, it would have been cool if they hadn't hyped the Balrog up at all.
Yeah, I think that having the Balrog come out like season 3 would have been much better than end of season 1, which I think is when it happens. But
some of the pacing's been good in some ways and bad in other ways. Like, it's been cool. Okay, we're not sitting around here waiting 8 episodes for them to mine Mithril or figure out what Mithril is.
Right.
But at the same time, we're jumping around so much that you're going to have to reveal things, and then what happens after that? Because we know once the Balrog's out, like, they have to abandon it. Yeah, they send centuries later people to go back and try to reclaim the mines, just to find out it's inhabited by orcs, but I don't know.
Lots of mystery still ahead, and
lots of mystery.
I'm curious how they're going to do it and if it's going to be worth watching, but we'll find out.
I think it'll be. I think this episode definitely had its flaws. Again, beautiful. I'm still excited to finish the last 2 episodes and see what the other storylines have, because again, really liked the Moria and the Hardfoot storylines right now where they're at. So,
all right. Well, with all of that being said, if you have any predictions, listeners, go ahead and drop them in our email, drop them on our socials. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are about how you think this season's going to end for Rings of Power. But that's going to be it for us for this episode. So this is going to be 2 Nerds signing off. See ya.
See ya.